So the Rajon Rondo to Dallas trade is kind of wild to think about, given the reception about it initially and what ended up happening. Side note, me talking about this trade on this channel 6 years ago, I feel like was the beginning of me kind of being like, oh, this is what I should talk about on YouTube. You know, things happening in the NBA. So in that sense, I have a little bit of a soft spot for this trade. I also have a soft spot because it was pretty good for my team. So I remember there was a conversation about should the Celtics trade Rondo, and it was like, well, do they give him a contract? Do they hold on to him? Do they, is Rondo worth keeping, or do they got to go the full rebuild route? And of course, they went the rebuild route. Basketball Reference tells me that the 2016 first-round pick that they got from Dallas in this move became Yabusele, who is not good. So in that sense, it wasn't great. But honestly, just the contributions that Jay Crowder gave them for a couple years to me was worth it. Crowder also involved in the Isaiah trade, but really Crowder was not a swing piece in that deal. They just needed to make the money work. And we'll get to his fit with the Mavs and all that, because that's, of course, the main thing here. But I just want to remember from the Celtics standpoint, there was a bit of a conversation going on of like, well, do they keep Rondo or do they trade him? And I believe they had signed Brad Stevens at this point, I remember, because that was a conversation. It was like, well, how are Brad and Rondo going to, be together and all that? And then I think another conversation was like, what is Rondo's actual value? It ended up being, not bad. I mean, it was a first and a second moved for the guy. It's not horrible, right? Anyway, if we talk about it from Dallas's perspective, of course it didn't go too well. The worst moment was Rondo basically quitting in round one against Houston. And there's a few things to be said about Rondo's play style, the Mavs' play style, him and Rick Carlisle's personalities. And I think it's an interesting thing where, sure, you can blame Rondo for not handling it the best and perhaps not being willing to adjust his game or being able to adjust his game enough to fit in with the Mavericks offense that had a little bit more ball movement and player movement, not just one guy dribbling all the time, which is what, of course, Rondo would like to do. But should you also not blame Dallas for not totally realizing what they were trading for? Because it was pretty daring of them to believe that you could put Rondo into a situation where he's not going to have the ball all the time. He's going to have to play off of other stuff, and he's going to, have to do handoff plays and perhaps set some off-ball screens and stuff. Like Rondo, he doesn't want to do that. Rondo wants you to give him the ball. He wants to call a play. He wants to throw it to the open guy, and he wants to get the assist. That's what it is, He wants to do stuff in transition, and Rondo, he's kind of a fascinating player to me. The idea of a guy who wants to be the primary ball handler, but is not a threat to score, and also doesn't shoot a lot of free throws. And sure, he's made a little bit of progress on his three, but we're talking about 2014 Rondo here, where he wasn't attempting threes, he wasn't making them, it just wasn't a thing. And it's like, can we really give that guy the ball all game? This is not Derrick Rose, who was the second biggest threat to drive in the NBA, you know what I mean? So it was such an interesting thing to see how teams manage that. And I remember for the Celtics, once Pearson, KG, and Ray weren't there, basically what it resulted in was Rondo having the ball in the fourth quarter and then just throwing it to someone else and hoping they'd score, which of course is not going to translate to winning basketball. Like, if the guy with the ball is not going to be a threat to score, then what the hell are we doing here, you know what I mean? So he goes to Dallas, and in that sense, it's like, okay, Monte and Dirk and Chandler Parsons, we remember he was still pretty good at this time. He didn't have knee problems yet. They'll shoot more than Rondo, okay? They'll play off of what Rondo does. At least that's what I envision Rondo saw. I would imagine that's what the Mavs front office and Rick Carlisle saw. But then it became apparent really fast that it's like, oh, wait a minute, Rondo wants to run the entire show. It's not like a we're going to run a couple more Rondo, Tyson Chandler, or Dirk pick and rolls, or in the case of Dirk, pick and pops a game. It's give me the ball, I'm going to call a play, you guys do whatever the hell you're supposed to do. It's like, well, wait a minute, we're going to give this guy the reins to this whole thing? He just showed up here. We were already pretty good. Because the Mavs were good. They were like 19-8 or something to open up that season before they traded for Rondo. And it was just such an awkward fit. I mean, like at that time, Rondo was a better player than Jameer Nelson, but Jameer Nelson was a better fit for that Mavs team because he could space out. He was fine with not having the ball all game. He'll take a few threes, stand in the corner. That's it. Whereas with Rondo, it's hey, give me the ball. Looking at the on-off stuff from December 20th to April 15th, regular season, the Mavs offense was 5 points worse per 100 possessions with Rondo. Their defense was a little better. Cool, fine. Overall, they were worse. But again, should we not blame Dallas for taking on a guy who did not fit with what they wanted to do? Because if you wanted to run a pass-heavy offense, don't trade for Rajon Rondo. He'll pass, but it's going to be one pass to an open guy after he's held the ball for 15 seconds, you know? I watched him do it in Boston for like 7 years. But then again, it's like, should Rondo have not been more willing to adjust? I don't know. There's an answer among all of that. I don't think it's any one person to blame. And it doesn't help when you're dealing with Rondo and Rick Carlisle, two of the more stubborn dudes in the league, you know? I guess it's interesting to think about if Dallas doesn't make the move. First, I think the Celtics simply trade Rondo somewhere else. I don't know where it would be. As for Dallas, I mean, could we have not seen a bit of a don't underestimate the heart of a champion sort of deal with that Mavericks team? They were amazing offensively before the move. Like, I think they had the best offense ever or something before the Rondo trade, and that would have gone down probably, even if they didn't make the Rondo move. But who knows? Maybe they end up using that first-round pick they traded for Rondo for somebody else, and could they have gone on some sort of a run, and could Dirk have had the opportunity to put in another great postseason run, which could have led to a conference finals or maybe even a finals? Well, looking at it, no, they would not have made the finals, because this was the first year of the Warriors being amazing. So, if they met Golden State, they would have got washed. But, looking at the other teams, I mean, the 2015 Clippers, of course, they had that collapse against Houston. Could that Dallas team have beaten them? Maybe. It would have been an interesting thing of, like, the old dudes versus the young dudes, if that would have been a matchup, or if they would have ran into, like, the Blazers, 2015 Blazers. And they lost in round one to the Grizzlies. It's tough to really tell. I mean, I don't think there was some secret magic team in Dallas that was ruined because of Rondo, but there's a chance that they do a little bit more in the postseason. So, yeah, it's interesting stuff, man. It's interesting to think about a move that I think the consensus was like, oh, wow, like Dallas, they hit a home run here. Like this is a team we really got to think about in the scheme of conference finals, NBA finals. Of course, when this move happened about 30 games into the year, I don't think we really knew what we were witnessing with the Warriors just yet. So, looking back or trying to remember the idea of like, well, could the Mavs go on some title run now? No. They would not have beaten the Warriors. It's point blank, wouldn't have happened. But could have been fun nonetheless. Now, I guess to think about it again, like let's say they make this move and it did work. Would that have meant that Rondo would have had to do more off the ball? Probably. He wasn't a big fan of it in Boston whenever they did it. To be fair, Doc's offense really wasn't that great. Like it relied on the talent of his guys, but they weren't running like super crazy stuff. I mean, it wasn't just ISOs all day, but it was sometimes kind of just ISOs all day, if I'm being honest. The other things to think about, could we have seen a lot of Rondo, Tyson Chandler pick and roll? yeah, potentially teams probably would have sagged off of Monte Ellis, but at that time Ellis was still good enough to where if you left him open, he could usually drive by you. But see, even then, like this 2015 Mavs team, they weren't spacing out like that, you know? I mean, they were spaced for 2015, but it wasn't like there was just a bunch of dudes standing at the three-point line. Like Dirk wasn't spotting up all day. I think he only shot like 3 threes a game or something. Yeah, he only shot 3.5 threes a game. So, what does that all mean? I don't know. That'll do it. The Rondo trade, it was something. It's one way to put it.